All right, guys, happy Friday. We are talking about fantasy football phonies. And no, not the people that give advice, which is 99% of the good sheep says, but players that you want to draft that people tell you you want to draft them, but you want to definitely avoid them because these guys have a big name. But I believe, and Jim's in the studio here as well. We believe that these guys are phonies, they're fakes. Do not waste a draft capital on them. These are players to avoid. Jim, welcome to the show.
Welcome, and I'm happy to not be one of those phonies, man. We are legit here. We are legit. We are finding the best players.
Well, the problem is first of all, when it comes to analysis, everybody's literally copying and pasting. I see these early rankings, and they're basically a copy and paste of last year. There's no thought process, whereas you and I, with the 16-round draft solution in the draft tool, dive in and actually give factual information. We anticipate, we project, we see things that happened last year and anticipate things that may not happen again this year. So it's a lot of thought process with us, Jim. We want to make sure that everybody actually wins their league, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
So in this episode, Jim, again, make sure you guys secure the 16-round draft solution. I've linked it below. Use code WIN to save, guys. It's going to help you guys. Sleepers, breakouts, optimal players drafting each round. Everything you need to crush your leagues. But in this episode, again, I've got 3 players, and you've got 3 fantasy football players that are relatively big, well-known names that, I'm just using the word phony here, but they're players to avoid. Players that don't get caught in the trap, okay? Again, I'm not sold on these guys, and we're going to explain why, and Jim's not sold on his 3 players. So let's dive right into it, Jim. I know you've got your first player lined up. Who is a fantasy football phony or someone you just don't like, someone you're just avoiding this year?
Yeah, well, I got to say, my first guy, I'm going to call a heartbreaker because he is going to break your heart this fantasy season. And he's a good football player. He's very good. He's on a great offense, but you do not want this guy on your team. He will destroy your fantasy team. And the reason is because this guy is the most inconsistent player in the top 60.
Wow.
His consistency rating, he only scores a 2 out of 10, which is about as bad as you can get. And the guy I'm talking about is T. Higgins of Cincinnati. Now, T. Higgins, it is a contract year for him, so that is a positive. I do like that, and that certainly gives a player some upside. But when you look at what this guy did last year, and it even worse, if you had him on any of your fantasy teams, you know what I'm talking about. The dude disappears. He's going to play, and he gets 0 targets, and he runs like 5 routes. He does that sort of stuff all the time, and you can't trust a player when you don't know what his overall usage is going to be. And the thing is, by the end of the season, when everything's all said and done, his stat line's going to look pretty good. It's going to say, oh, this guy's great. He's going to be great for my fantasy team. Don't bite on that bait. Don't take it. Avoid him. Go with someone else.
Yeah, very good points right there. And to me, you're going to spend relatively high draft capital if you want him. He is sitting 12th on the consensus. And just a rule of thumb for me personally, I don't look at wide receiver 2s. Like, there's a ton of wide receiver 1s you can get after him. Chris Olave is sitting there, right? I don't really trust this
Garrett
guy.
Wilson.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's after him, or he's coming off before. I see him ranked before on most rankings, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's other guys. There's Drake London's of the world. There's even Deontay Johnson's a steal this year. Give me Deontay Johnson, who's the one on the team. Pickens could take that job. But the point I'm trying to make is he's a wide receiver too, and he's very expensive. And then you tack on exactly what Jim said with the inconsistencies. He's a phony. He's a fantasy football phony. How about that?
He's going to break your heart, man. He is going to break your heart if you take him.
There's a
so what about you? What do you got? Who's your first guy?
There's a song about that. I'm only going to break your heart. I'm not going to break out the song here, but that's not going to sound good. All right. My fantasy football phony that I'm avoiding, and I've done this for years and years and years and years and years. And I'm going to continue to do this for years and years and years. I'm going to avoid this guy. The guy I'm talking about, he finished last year 11th amongst running backs in PPR. He was drafted as a top 5 pick. He was drafted relatively high last year. He busted on his ADP. The guy I'm talking about is Dalvin Cook. And for many reasons, I think he's definitely, first and foremost, in his twilight years, in his sunset years is kind of the word I'm looking for here. And then I just went back and looked at a bunch of his stats. I'm not going to deep divulge and break down all the stats here, but he only finished one season. I think it was like last year. Before that, he had like a 14-game season, a 14-game season. And he has a fancy way of like always missing your fantasy football playoffs, or when it comes to like in and around the time where you're about to win your league or get to a point where you need him in the playoffs, he doesn't show up. Like I see him here. I think this is back. Let me pull up a year here, 2021, for example. And I don't see him playing. I don't know if it's a bye week, because I see him. I think week 3 was the bye week in 2021. But like week 16, he's not even there. And then I see him coming out in week 15 with 11 points, week 17 with 4.3 points. Like, I don't know. He's just very inconsistent. He's in his, sunset years. I'm not sold here. And again, he's still I think the Chiefs are kind of off him this year. Finally, I think he's sitting. Where is he sitting right now? 16th amongst running backs, but he's still sitting ahead of guys like Davion Pierce, which I think is crazy. Dalvin Cook, been a phony his whole life. Not sold on him. He had like one really good year, but even still missed the fantasy football playoffs, I think, in that year. Jim, I'm not a fan of Dalvin Cook, man. Durability, suspect near playoff time. No, for me.
Yeah, and for me, I'm in agreement mostly because the dude's 28. He's 28 years old this year. And there has been a ton of talk, a ton of rumors floating around the NFL that he get traded. Yeah, maybe to Denver. That's what I've heard, is he might get traded to Denver. That is not what happens to a running back in his prime. The Vikings want him off the team. He's a big sink in costs. He costs that team a lot of money. This team has brought in a really nice receiver core. I got to say, I think they're going to be primarily pass focused this year. They're going to be running the ball less. And yeah, just the fact that when running backs decline, it's not a gradual thing. It is off a cliff. It's off a cliff and it's over. And then they're out of the league. Dalvin Cook is absolutely a candidate for being a guy who's not even going to be in the league in 24. So I don't want any part of that. You go with youth. That's the Cuddy system, right? You go with the youth and avoid these old guys.
Yeah, they brought in Dwayne McBride. I think they drafted Dwayne McBride. They got Madison. They're going to throw, they got the rookie Addison there as well. Is it Madison and Addison? Yeah, they got Alexander Madison and they got Jordan Addison. So there's a little bit of a rhyme going in there. I'm not sure if they did that on purpose. I highly doubt it, but
So would you take a chance on Alexander Madison? Would you draft him maybe with the thought process that he might take over? Because when he's played, he's been great. Anytime that Dalvin Cook is out, he is an excellent option. He's been an excellent fantasy player. What do you think about that?
I don't want to waste a pick because, first of all, I mean, I'm not sure what's going on with Cook. Without the certainty of Cook being gone, then probably not. I'm just not going to take that chance right now. No, I don't want to waste a pick on a potential backup. But I definitely see some upside there. I'm just not overly excited. Even the times he had to start over, Cook when Cook was hurt, he had a couple of good games, but there's a couple times he really busted. So I don't know. He just doesn't excite me. Like, I'm just not a guy that's gonna waste a roster spot on for me. I like the younger guy.
Right.
All right, my turn, isn't it?
No, it's my turn.
I'm just jumping. I'm excited to go again. All right.
Well, let's just keep on the topic of old running backs, because I've got one for you here, and he has been a centerpiece of this offense since he's joined. And even though he's been in a timeshare basically his whole career, he's been very productive, mostly because he catches a lot of passes. He's very involved. But the guy I'm talking about that you need to stay away from this year is Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers. And multiple reasons why. First of all, Aaron Rodgers is gone. Aaron Rodgers is no longer going to be throwing him balls. It's Jordan Love. We don't know how good Jordan Love is going to be. I personally think that Jordan Love is going to be a bust, but that is a huge red flag right there. That's that change in quarterbacks. But also, the dude turns 29 during the fantasy football season. 29-year-old running back. I've talked many times about A.J. Dillon, who I think is going to take over that backfield this year, just because Dillon has the youth. Dillon is ready to take this on, and it's a contract year for him. So there's a lot of negatives for Aaron Jones. I think he fades away into oblivion this year. And again, another guy who you're probably not even going to see in the NFL in 2024.
Yeah, not excited about Aaron Jones as well. And it's, again, very expensive. 15th on the consensus rankings you're going to spend for him. And I remember 2 years ago, last year, I think Aaron Jones kind of regained the title as the RB1. But a couple years ago, Dylan was the guy. But you look at the volume, when you look at the touchdowns, Dylan was beating him in all categories. And with Aaron Rodgers being gone, the checkdowns, that rapport, it's an entirely new offense, right? New, fresh, and out with the old, in with the new. And
Mhm.
Dylan is just going to get all that goal line work as well. Yeah, someone I'm completely fading as well. I agree with you. And we didn't plan this list together, but Aaron Jones, I'm going to be staying away completely, Jim. Not even going to be
Yeah,
not
and
even a thought.
as far as AJ Dillon goes, that is a guy that I'm absolutely looking to get, and he's a bargain on draft boards. I think
Good
he's
value.
8th, 9th round. What a great time to get a potential RB1 on your fantasy team than to take a running back that late and have him be able to produce what AJ Dillon is going to be able to do this year. So I'm excited about that player for sure.
Absolutely. All right, my next one, my fake, my phony. You're going to like this one here. The guy I'm talking about is Travis Etienne, currently sitting 11th on the Concheapsis rankings. Why do I think he's a fake and a phony? Well, he was drafted in the first round. He didn't even play the first year. He got hurt. So injury is obviously a concern for me. And then last year, when we got a full year out of him, he did not perform where we wanted to. Now, imagine you drafted him. A lot of people drafted him with relatively high draft capital, thinking he's a true RB1. Week 1 and week 2, around 8 points per game in PPR. So immediately starting the season, you're like, oh, I'm so upset. I got 8 points out of my potential RB1, RB2. Very disappointing. I then week 4 comes along, gets 10 points. Week 3 comes along, gets 10 points. Week 4 comes along, 3.2 fantasy points. Okay. Then he starts getting some mediocre
Ouch.
games, has a little bit of a boost midseason. Week 8 and 9 had a good season. Imagine you're in week 12, he gets 0.3 fantasy points. You're like, oh, damn, I'm going to now bench him, get 7.6 the week after, 3.2 the week after, 12.7, 14. And then week 18, 5.4. I'm looking at these numbers, and there's a lot of games where he's a complete write-off. You might as well have benched him pretty much because he's putting up like 3, 4, 8 points max. Like, it's very inconsistent. And now they brought in Tank Bigsby, who could be a dynamic guy. There's something we don't know. And then the injuries are a little bit of concern. I think he had some sort of ankle problem, a little ankle surgery last year. Again, ATN and then drop issues as well. I'm not sold, and he's very expensive. And Tank Bigsby is going for pretty much free. And there's a chance he could steal the job. Who knows, right? I love the offense. I'm just not sold on ATN being that true RB1. A lot of people will draft him as an RB1 thinking that. I'm telling you right now, I think he's a phony. And if you get him, you're going to be very upset certain weeks. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, and I mean, I think best case scenario, you've got a running back by committee back there with Tank Bigsby. I
Yeah.
mean, whether it's a 50-50 split or a 60-40 or whatever, you're not going to get workhorse numbers out of Etienne. And that's one of the reasons why I really liked Etienne. I'm like, even though it was, kind of okay last year, it's going to be a great offense, and he's going to be the only back there. He's only going to be the only guy. And so he's going to get the volume. He's going to be great. But then they drafted Tank Bigsby in the third round. Was it the third round or the second round?
Yeah, I think it was like second or third. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's high draft capital, man. That's a player that they want to play immediately. And so he's going to take valuable touches away from Etienne. And again, I just think it's going to be very tough for anyone to get good value out of Etienne this year, just based on how high he's going on the draft board. He needs to fall farther. It's the same thing with Kenneth Walker, man. Same thing. Those guys are suspended way too high on the draft board after what happened on the draft. I'm very shocked that they haven't fallen a little more, like maybe to the fourth round.
Yeah.
But at the second round, that's just suicide. Fantasy suicide. Don't do that.
Tank was drafted in the third round, so relatively high draft capital. He's definitely going to be used. They don't draft a guy in the third round just to bench him. There's something maybe the Jacksonville Jaguars know that we don't. And when you talk about Zach Charbonnet, I mean, you look at a guy like that. I mean, I don't know if I trust Pete Carroll for what he says, but he says there. I mean, maybe this is just to motivate both Charbonnet and, of course, Walker. But he's saying, yeah, they're going to be fighting for the job. So, I mean, that's interesting. Maybe there's something we don't know. One thing that concerns me with Kenneth Walker, and make a note of this mentally, write it down, whatever. I remember because I was a Kenneth Walker owner last year. He ran off to the sideline. I guess he tweaked his ankle one game. Remember, he came out of that one game. I remember this because I was an owner. and it didn't look like much. So I went on social media and told him to get back on. He's being weak. He's being soft. Not you weren't even touched. It didn't look like anything. He ends up blocking me. And again, so my concern is he as durable as we think? Is he, or should we be concerned that maybe he's going to get a lot of like non-contact injuries, and who knows? But I think there might be something, again, Seattle knows that we don't, Jim. But yeah, it might be a committee. So Bigsby and what was the other guy? Chabernet could be guys that could be starting. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm not convinced that they would be the starters, but like I said, timeshares are just something I'm really not interested in, unless there's the potential that the guy could really seriously take over the backfield, and then I'm interested. But yeah, so anyway, my third guy is a guy that's been in the league for a long time, and he's been very productive while he's been in the league. But the dude's getting old, and after what happened with the draft, I can see his role is diminished in this offense. But the guy I think you need to stay away from, the wide receiver, Keenan Allen of the Los Angeles Chargers. The dude is 31 this year. And, this is the time when wide receivers start to fade after age 30. Once they get out of their 20s, they've usually already hit their peak. Now they're on the decline. He missed like 8 games last year because of that hamstring injury, which was just killing me because I had him in a lot of leagues last year. I never should have took him because he was too old then. He was 30 years old last year. That was too old. But I took him anyway. Stay away from him. There's now Quentin Johnson in this offense. I've got really good feelings about Quentin Johnson.
Yeah, I love him.
Really making strides in his rookie year because, man, all the offensive elements of the Chargers are old. They're all old guys. Mike Williams is the young guy at 29. That's not a good situation. So, not a good situation for Keenan Allen. But I think this is going to be a partnership. Justin Herbert is going to have Quentin Johnson with him for a long time. I think that's really, really good. They're going to develop a really solid rapport. I think Quentin Johnson really becomes the wide receiver one on this league. And I think Keenan Allen fades away and maybe just gets injured and just doesn't play. That happens.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I'm not spending an early pick on Keenan Allen, who, again, was banged up last year. Again, also in his sunset part of his lifetime here in his career. And I look at a guy like Quentin Johnson, and I'm excited. Early draft capital in him. He's got the young Herbert who's working towards a contract. Mike Williams can't stay on the field. And Quentin Johnson's a good balance of speed and strength. Big guy, very versatile, and one of the best wide receiver prospects out of this draft. I'm all in on that for value, and I'm fading Keenan Allen. So, yeah, I mean, Quentin Johnson has a stash with major upside, and with the old and with the new, Jim.
Yeah. And I think Quentin Johnson's going in like the 8th round right now. Great. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's
so,
value. And there's tons of value at wide receiver, but a lot of like question marks. So a lot of these rookies coming in, Addison and Johnston and Jalen Hyatt with the Giants. Tons of upside, but we don't know, right? Rashee Rice is another guy we like at with the Chiefs. We don't know, but here's the thing: I guarantee you, once you start hearing any type of buzz on these guys in the offseason, Mahomes is praising Rashee Rice, potential to take wide receiver one. Look for their ADPs to skyrocket. It's going to be crazy.
Yes, it will definitely happen. Yes,
yeah, let's see it every single year. All right, so my last one.
So who's your last guy?
All right, he's a fake. He's a phony. Are you ready for this one, Jim? All right. We've talked about Cook. We've talked about ATN. And this guy right here, I don't see the hype. I never did. And I kind of understand a little bit. Well, let me tell you who it is. The guy I'm talking about is DJ Moore, who's now on a run-first team with a quarterback that is a running back in Justin Fields. And I'm just not sold on this guy. Where did he finish last year? DJ Moore finished outside the top 20. He was like 24th last year, right? Amongst wide receivers. And the guy, I can kind of see, like I said, why he kind of gets a hype. He had a couple 1,000-yard receiving seasons, right? But he's just not that good. Like I don't see it. I'm not excited about it. Years to wow me, I'm not wow. But and again, when that trade happened, the Bears get DJ Moore. I'm like, yeah, who cares? Like, I'm not sold on him being a great player. I think he's like a low end wide receiver one He's not, they try to he's like one of those guys trying to fit a square peg in a circle hole, right? He's trying to be a wide receiver one, but he's not a true wide receiver one. I'm not sold. What do you think of DJ Moore? Do you like him?
Well, when it comes to DJ Moore, the guy has been saddled with terrible quarterback play for basically his entire career. And people have always praised his talent. They say the talent is there. He has the ability, but he's always just been saddled with bad quarterbacks, which has a point. And we've seen lots of middling wide receivers go change teams. Let's talk about Stephon Diggs. Let's talk about A.J. Brown. They go to a team with an emerging quarterback. That quarterback turns them into a wide receiver one, an elite option. And I think that's what people are thinking with regards to DJ Moore going in now playing with Justin Fields. But I got to say, man, we've seen Justin Fields in the league for basically 2 years now. We know what kind of player he is. He is not a passer. It was the lowest volume passing offense in the league last year. I don't anticipate they will be the same this year. They will pass the ball more this year, but there were many games when he only passed for like 150 yards. He threw the ball 10 times, for 150 yards. And you cannot count on fantasy assets to perform if there's only 10 targets available to be caught.
One thing I look at is how many attempts has he throw? Like, does a quarterback throw? And
right.
Justin, this is depressing. You ready for this? PPR. It doesn't matter PPR quarterback. I got it pulled up. I'm just pulling it up here. In passing attempts. That, again, when I look at a wide receiver, I look at the quarterback. How often does he throw? Do you know what Justin Fields was ranked last year? In passing attempts. You want just take a guess and be.
I'm going to go last. He was last in passing attempts.
27th in 318 passing attempts. He was there with Tannehill and Garoppolo, and Lamar Jackson was just above that. 27th in passing attempts. So that shows you there's going to be no volume. When you are looking at a quarterback and receivers like Mahomes, you're looking at Rashee Rice. Yes, there's a lot of targets, but those targets aren't good. Mahomes threw third, 648 passing attempts, third amongst quarterbacks in passing. Cousins threw a lot. Burrow, Jared Goff even threw. Trevor Lawrence threw a lot, right? Allen threw 10th and 9th, and he runs a lot, right? So you want a quarterback that throws the ball. And that is important. That's where I like Herbert. He threw second right next to Brady last year, 699 pass attempts, and he had a down year. His wide receivers are banged up. So that Quentin Johnston looking more, good. So things to think about when you're picking a player. And it's going to be a low pass volume offense there. DJ Moore is a no for me yet again.
Yeah, and when it comes to guys, like Justin Fields before last year, or Josh Allen, before he got Stephon Diggs, there were flashes of big play passing ability on both those guys. They weren't maybe getting as many yards as you think, but you knew they had the talent to do it. We just haven't seen that out of Justin Fields, and we've had 2 years to see some flashes, some real down the field, stretch in the field ability. I don't think he has it. I think that the dude's just an elite running athlete. He's going to be great for fantasy. Justin Fields is an awesome pick for fantasy this year, just because he's going to get you 1,000 yards and probably 10 touchdowns, I'm guessing. But I just don't want any of his receiving options because I don't think they're going to do anything.
I agree. I'm not touching them. I'm not touching Lamar's receiving options either because it's just a low pass volume team.
Exactly. I don't know why people are getting excited about OBJ and Flowers. I'm like, dude, those guys at best are the number 2 or number 3 receiver on a low volume passing offense. It's not going to happen, So
not at all.
Yeah.
All right, Jim. Well, there it is, guys. Your fantasy football phonies. There you go. Stay away. These guys are names, but we've explained why we're going to be completely avoiding them this year. All right. Make sure you guys secure the solution. 16 rounds. Linked it below. Smash thumbs up and let me know a phony in the comments below. All right. And don't say us because that's not very nice. All right, Jim. We're out. We'll talk soon, guys.
All right. Have a good one, Counselor. Bye.